This is Ben Wheeler here today with the Sunday Superversive live stream with Scott Huggins. How are you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great, Ben. How are you?
Oh, I'm certainly existing. And that's as much as anything can say. And, since we are nearing Halloween, uh, that's doing pretty good, rather than being in the between state of undeath or in some sort of metaphorical personal hell. Uh, which
That's a
is
good point.
something everyone should seek to avoid at all costs.
I avoid undeath whenever I can.
Excellent. So, Scott, I've brought you on here mostly to talk about, your new cover and your projects. It's been quite some time since I've had you on last, and even though you're part of the Superversive crew, I'll be working my way around you guys as things go on. I think I've got Ben Stevens on next week, and I don't know if I got anyone beyond that. So don't write these things down. So tell us about the cover. What led you to do this fabulous new cover for All Things Huge and Hideous?
Well, I gotten some feedback from some folks that while the previous cover was was quite well done. One of the issues was that it was just a little dark, and the main characters were a bit backgrounded. Which, of course, when you've got a dragon on the cover, it's kind of hard for everything else, anything else to say anybody but the background. So there was that. But it was actually, I'm going to have to give the credit to Superversive's Jason Rennie, because we were talking about a cover, and he says to me in the middle of Dragon Con, we're both up at Bard's Tower, and he says, "Hey, I've really got this guy wanting to meet. I think he could do an awesome cover for you." And I said, "That's exciting." Because I certainly never had anybody, met an artist who was going to consult with me on the cover before. And so he takes me up one floor to where the artists are and introduces me to Paul Maitland. And I'd never met Paul, but Paul is an awesome guy. And he says, "Tell me about your story." And he starts sketching this great cover of James sitting in his workroom poring over a book about how to treat sick dragons. And just started out. I'm like, man, that's looking great. So Jason does the deal, and then Paul not only does he do the cover, but he live streams himself doing it, which was just amazingly fun to watch. And it was great to see this. It was great to see this take shape. Paul has this great comic style, and I do mean that in the best possible sense of that. That went very well with the dark humor, which All Things Huge and Hideous is written in. So, and honestly, in some ways, it reminds me of, and it's killing me, I can't remember the gentleman's name. It reminds me a little bit of the guy who used to do Terry Pratchett's covers. The ones with the two flowers luggage flying through the air and everybody hanging on for dear life. The only thing is,
Hmm.
I mean, Paul's work is not nearly as complex, nor and that's certainly not that's not supposed to be a slam, for heaven's sake. Actually, I think in the case of my book, it's probably uh, it's probably better that it's not so busy. Kirby, I think. Jack Kirby was the guy. Yeah, Jack Kirby had this wonderful sort of comic book style, and Paul reminds me just a little bit of that. No, oh man, or is
Yeah.
Jack Kirby the guy who worked at Stan Lee? I'm sure it was Kirby. Dang it, I can't. Okay, I might have that name wrong, but in any case, it's an awesome cover.
Yes,
And more people should give this guy some cover business because mine was the first cover he's ever done. But I'm willing to bet it won't be the last.
absolutely. He's fantastic, a real professional, and really has done some fantastic work from what I can see. I actually bought a couple of his prints, including a very badass Boba Fett, which I am enjoying immensely, even if my wall does not seem to like any attempt to attack a poster to it. But that's
Oh, you love
okay.
me.
A few of them are standing on there. That's the important thing. Uh, Honestly, I love artists like Paul. Talking to him, he's a real great, real humble guy. And honestly, I'm looking forward to all the stuff we can do with him in the future because he has agreed to do a few other covers
Oh,
for
good. I'm
Superversive
glad.
Press.
That
Oh,
is awesome.
yeah. Him, Brian Silverbacks, and others, just real stand up guys. Uh, let's see. So, what else have you been working on since the expansion of All Things Huge and Hideous? For those who don't know, All Things Huge and Hideous was, I guess, a novelita. What's it called? It's not novella. It's something
No, no, it's
smaller.
that no, no, no. All Things Huge and Hideous is the novel length version. So it is a full novel, although I will admit it's a short novel. What you're thinking of, which was the novelette, was Doctor to Dragons, and that was the first sort of issue. It's almost like the first three chapters uh,
Ah.
of of All Things Huge and Hideous. So All Things Huge and Hideous is it is Doctor to Dragons, but it's even more of it, and it's got more of a full novel arc. Although, like classic works such as Huckleberry Finn, it does tend to be a bit episodic, and that's kind of because I was having fun with it, and I hope, of course, that all my readers will equally have fun with it in that way. But if you want to see the original cover for All Things Huge and Hideous, you can go look at on Amazon. You can look at Doctor the Dragons, and it's the same original cover there, but All Things Huge and Hideous now has a much better cover.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Excellent.
Um, mhm. So let's see. You wanted to know about some other things, yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Tell us what you're up to.
okay. Well, let's see. First thing, I'll start with something that is coming out very soon, later this week, right before Halloween, on the 30th. The podcast Starship Sofa will drop my latest short story, which is called Wheels Up Time. And that's a bizarre sort of near science fiction story in which uh, this girl gets caught up in a bizarre time vortex with the other members of a trans-Pacific flight and finds the world has changed quite a bit since the present day, and for reasons that will become clear, finds herself faced with a choice of whether all of a sudden to become a space colonist.
Make that choice forcible for her.
Not forcible, but let's say attractive in ways that she had not previously considered.
Ah, that is
Uh,
fantastic. I love it. Reminds me.
and that story is actually related a little bit to a story that I had in um, Andromeda Spaceways a few years ago, sort of set in this universe where people can essentially have their skin converted into a living spacesuit,
Wow.
and this helps. This makes colonization of the solar system much more practical since the ever-present danger of spaceship rupture, spacesuit rupture is no longer present.
Right, right. I get you. Uh, so we're that does sound cool. Uh, see, do you have anything going on with the planetary anthologies going forward?
Well, I really hope so, because there is a third story which is in that same universe, although with very different characters, that I did submit to one of the Saturn anthology, and I got sort of what I might call a soft yes on that one, but I'm not, I'm not absolutely 100% sure where that anthology is at the moment.
Well, for those who don't know, we do have the planetary anthologies. They've moved from Superversive Press for reasons of paperwork to Tuscany Bay Books, where they are re-releasing them with new covers and so on and so forth, which shall be quite enjoyable. I'm still doing the Soul anthology, and of course, I'm still open to things until about February or so, since, as before, my deadline is last. But Richard
Re-
Paolini is certainly pumping them out.
Remind me what the theme for Soul is.
One
I
moment.
mean, besides the sun, obviously, but I mean in character.
Absolutely. So, the themes to follow are nobility and righteousness, but also godhood, fire, harvest, and good fortune. Uh, in general, I'm looking for something 3 to 8K words. A little over, a little under, that's fine too. Um, I'm real easy about it, metaphorical wise. Uh, let's see here. Here's what I wrote about it. Um, an essay on weaponizing the sun as a last ditch effort to defeat an alien bug menace? Tantalizing. A story on man's hubris? Classic. A man fighting against a sun cult? Sure. A scarecrow that comes alive with the power of the sun and the harvest to terrify the villagers? I like your thinking, but are you sure that that's not a Mary Sue self insert story? Scarecrow who turned up in my room when I blinked? You know. While I reach for my lighter and my Bible, let's ruminate on Helios, Helion from a golden age, Apollo, Aurora, and a thousand other sun characters who promoted goodness, virtue, and mercy even through their own folly. What's
Awesome.
more, God, the Holy Spirit, and Christ are associated with the sun, for the Lord God is a sun and shield, Psalm 88, 84, Psalm 84:11, and so on and so forth. I go over it.
Okay. Yeah. So sounds like it is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. I've got a whole bunch of stories already, and I'm just kind of looking forward to it. Um, in general, which is really what this is all about for me. If it's not enjoyable for a lot of things, it's just I'll do it. But I'm just glad it's getting done.
Okay.
Mm.
So let's see. What else could I tell you? Um, so I'm working on right now. Just this morning, uh, I finished plotting out. Well, okay, we did the first pass on plotting out because I tend to be the kind of person who plots multiple times and then sometimes replots. I've never learned to write a novel as a pantser. That's just that would be a recipe for madness on my part. But I just finished doing the first pass of a plot for a book about a Gorgon assassin
Ooh,
who ends up. This is sort of one of those. The monster saves the prince from another. The monster princess saves the prince from another monster
you have my
to
full attention.
to 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 to, uh, to mess with that trope even more than it's already been messed with.
Absolutely.
And yeah, no, it's the see the story starts out with her. Uh, uh, how will I put this? So the kingdom is crumbling beneath the assault of a rebel. The rebel is marching invincibly behind the head of a dead Gorgon, so the loyalist forces can do nothing but retreat or be turned to stone. What the rebels really should have asked themselves is, did this particular Gorgon have a daughter
Ah,
who is herself a rather well known assassin? Turns out the answer to that question is yes. And the daughter is a little bit tired of being an assassin, so she's figured out a way that she offers the prince a way out of his rebellion if he will marry her. And that's the
as these
beginning of the
things go.
story. Yeah, that's the beginning of the story.
No, it's worth it. And I happen to have some images of living with a gorgon that I'm putting on top for everyone to see.
Oh,
Because
really?
oh yes, I'm quite the aficionado of monster girls. You can imagine, much to the consternation and I'm sure emotional pain of Corey McCleary, our mutual friend and Discord server admin. Um, let's see, there it is. It just popped up. Moved it over to the side, and clearly, this is how it works out. Um,
Oh, really?
absolutely.
Oh, whoops. Shoot, I'm getting a little feedback there. Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, that's
Right.
good.
There's a whole bunch of them like that. And it's basically, them blinded, them having to go through married life. Uh, he has to, washing the dishes, but because he's blind, he keeps dropping them. All that good stuff. It's quite hilarious, in a touching and heartfelt way.
Oh, I want
Uh,
to see some more of those.
I'll throw them up throughout our chat. Also, for those who are interested in something from myself, I will be, once Scott and I are finished talking, I will be putting up about 5 or so minutes of the Great Black Cat of the Witching Hour, which I will be putting up um, on the channel uh, at Halloween on midnight. Probably before midnight. I'm gonna say like 8 o'clock. That feels about right, if I remember. Anyway, uh, but no, I dig it. So, like, is it like a classic Gorgon, or is it like more of a species Gorgon?
Um, let's see. It's more of a species Gorgon in this case. So yeah, in fact technically my heroine is a half Gorgon. She's a product of human and Gorgon herself, but her gaze powers are undiminished by the adulteration of her blood so far.
Ah, fantastic.
I mean, they have to be interfertile, or it's not really helping the king's situation. Just more that would only be postponing his problems for a generation, since there would be no next generation. On the other hand, um, you know, the kingdom might gain some really interesting powers if the Gorgon genes breed true.
I'm certain they would, or true enough anyway.
True
Um,
enough.
True enough, and that's the important thing. I do have an interesting idea that I have it played out, and of course has no scientific backing because that would take the fun out of it. Uh, that if you have powers based on what the mother is, the as long as it's possible to breed between like humans and gorgons, humans and centaurs and stuff like that,
Yeah.
you would probably have it set up so that male children would be human, but female children would be whatever their mother is.
Hmm.
I've been thinking
Interesting.
about that and like how you would do it and how you would set up like half breeds and stuff like that, whether you could have half breeds, because you still have the problem of um, genetics and, I just said science takes all the fun out of it, but really I'm going to talk about science for a minute. You have the science of like how like when you have children that are different blood types than their mother or some other problem like that that can cause issues, um, especially if there's a complication in the pregnancy, as well as any number of other things that pop up, including size differences in the case of some of these things. Uh,
Like centaurs, for example.
exactly. Now, the real question is the human half pregnant or the horse half? The world needs
Yeah,
to know.
that has always been a question, uh, and not to mention just the mechanics of the whole thing, which could be really really interesting.
But like I say, if they've got a soul, it's not bestiality.
Yeah, there is that. Which, actually, I started thinking about that as I was writing, because here's the thing. It seems to me I've read so many stories. Like, there's a really good, there's a good sort of, what's the best word for this? You ever, historical fantasy with magic, where it's like, there's the Roman Empire, but on the other hand, there's like wizards and stuff in it. You know that
Mm-hmm.
kind of genre?
Yeah.
So there's an author named Judith Tarr. Have you ever heard of her?
No, not
Yeah.
substantially.
Well, she wrote a number of things from sort of the. I mean, I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, that she was a practicing Christian herself.
Ooh.
And the thing was that she wrote a number of. There's a trilogy she wrote, and aside from the Hounds of God, I can't remember a single title. And what's even worse is, I'm pretty sure that was like the middle book's title. So trust me to not remember the useful part. But the idea was her main character was an elf who was who had become a monk, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and the problem was that the church was increasingly teaching, or maybe had always taught, but it's been so long I don't remember, that elves did not have souls, which is now striking me as kind of funny because when I think about how the church really treated people who did not look like the people that always been around. I mean, you see the church go into say along with Hernan Cortez into America, and
Mm-hmm.
you know here they are. They're confronted by the Aztecs, who are if anyone was ever worshiping demons, I mean, there you have it. Whole pyramids of skulls and cutting people's hearts out and all that stuff.
And they keep finding new ones.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's all and of course looked probably about as different from the Europeans as anyone who could, except maybe with the exception of sub-Saharan Africa. You know, and I don't remember once the church suggesting that these people did not have soul. you know
Yeah.
I mean, and the church and the conquistadors did a lot of horrible stuff to these poor people. I mean, they really did. But nowhere do I remember a suggestion that somehow these people were literally not human and not worth saving. So it really struck me as odd. It's like, I would think that historically the church would. I mean, even if you believe that, even if you believe, which I don't, but even if you believe that the church was BS, you know,
Mhm.
um, you know, that they would actually preach that everyone would have souls. Because if you literally say, these people don't have souls, they're not worth doing anything for, unless you're willing to go exterminate us right then you are absolutely surrendering any power you might have over these people. You
Yeah.
know, even if you look at the church from the worst possible light, you would think that, oh yeah, yep, you totally have a soul. By the way, church attendance is every week, and the tithe is 30%. Yeah. Um, I
Well,
mean,
that's the whole point of Vox Day's Soma Helvetica, which is using Thomas Aquinas's arguments, tweaked, of course, for the fantasy setting, to prove whether or not elves have soul. And I'm with you all the way. It's like if they're sentient, if they can create art, and they're not a part of a hive mind or some other thing that would necessarily truncate the free will of an individual, and in which case the hive mind itself would have a soul, rather
yeah,
than an individual member, then these individuals had souls. I was witnessing to this one kid who was pretty smart, so he was going over various arguments, and I've heard all the arguments before. There's no new arguments under the sun. And he goes, "Well, what if a farmer and his ants, and it's like with God?" And I'm like, "Hold on a second, we're not ants to God." And he's like, "Yeah, but listen, we're soul beings, we're not ants. Therefore, he is involved, with us." And I think the same would be for your little bit beastie characters of any sort of world, centaur to gorgon to elf, to I don't know. I don't know if I want to include goblins, but might as well goblins.
well, like I said, I mean, unless the goblins are truly incapable of virtue, I mean, like literally everything they do is wrong. And yeah, which always struck me as, I mean, with C.S. Lewis, the argument is, I always loved C.S. Lewis's argument about the devil is, the devil is not the opposite of God. He can't be, because that would mean that he would have, that literally everything that God was, intelligent, you know, uh,
Hmm.
you know, powerful, he would be the opposite of. He would be an anti-intelligent being of anti-power, which means there would be nothing of him. He would not, by being God's opposite, he would be non-existent.
Yep.
Um, and therefore, Satan is not the opposite of God. Satan is the opposite of Michael, the archangel, and that made a lot more sense to me.
You see, to me, it was always the opposite of Jesus Christ, but not in the God sense, but in the characterization sort of sense. Not that I'm
Well, in the
denying that Jesus
characterization,
Christ is God. It's more like rather than sacrifice himself or sacrifice even an inch of his heavenly throne, Satan rebel. But while Jesus Christ went down and died the worst sort of criminal's death.
mm-hmm.
That's how I always viewed it. But that's a good point too. I have to think about that. Huh.
Yeah. So I have trouble with the idea of a created being that doesn't have a soul and free will, unless you're talking about something like a golem. And then a golem isn't good or evil. A golem is a tool.
Exactly.
I mean, I suppose I could imagine. I guess I could imagine goblins or something, or orcs, as essentially biorobots, made to, and in that case they would be soulless. I mean, if they were golems or constructs that were bred to kill and fight and nothing else, then that would make.
Yeah. But we don't necessarily have that sort of we don't like it's one of those things. It's like that would depend on the writer and how they all set it up. Because I'm always
Absolutely.
of the opinion that anything that what I described earlier, um, speaking of individuals anyway, sentient can create art and not like an individual part of a hive mind or anything like that. So independent. Um, though there is an argument that humans are low key hive minds, but don't worry about it. That's what I tell people. I probably tell people to do that with too many things. So, are you planning on going like other monster girls in with your new story?
I think there's going to be the potential of it. I doubt you'll see any, at least in the first in the um oh good heavens, I can't talk today. Probably in the first novel you wouldn't see anything because one of the issues I realized I've already written sort of the first part of this as a short story, and I haven't sold it yet, unfortunately. But I would be I hope I can. It is out somewhere. I think I'm trying to sell it to podcast. Well, but the thing is, I realized that the setup I had given to this world, I mean, where you've got, if the kingdom's fate depends on two sides, each of which have, whole armies of humans, but like only one or two supernatural creatures per army, then almost by definition, magic and supernatural creatures are fairly rare in this world. Otherwise, you get something like you saw in Narnia, where it's like, well, we put the centaur heavy cavalry out in front,
Yep.
and and the sentient tigers in front of them, and then we have the hippogriffs and the talking eagles dropping small boulders on people. Which, by the way, that battle scene and how the directors orchestrated that is still one of those things that blows me away. It's one of the triumphs of modern movie making that someone actually thought out, if I had all these things that could think, how would they act in battle?
Yep.
And how would you use them? I'm like, I don't know who came up with that, but I want that person for my mentor because that was freaking brilliant. And it didn't come out, and it wasn't something, as much as I respect C.S. Lewis, it wasn't something that came from, because he didn't describe, C.S. Lewis didn't know anything about this, at least not beyond,
He
yeah,
talked
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Uh,
but I mean, he knew what it felt like to be in one for an individual soldier, but not how to plan one out. That's never in the books.
well, yeah, he never goes into detail in the books. There is a scene where Aslan's like, and you want to put your eagles over here and such with your centaurs, and like he
Yeah,
doesn't actually talk about it.
yeah. But he
Um,
actually says like such and such. He doesn't say a such.
yes.
Yeah, but that was brilliant, and I realized that the whole assumption that my first story in this universe worked on is humans are an overwhelming majority, and other species, while certainly not unknown, are pretty special when they show up.
Yep.
So the monster girls are going to be few and far between in an absolute sense, although they will probably be a bit more foregrounded in the story,
Of course,
as
they're
the
all gathered together to the prince randomly. All of a sudden, he's a cross section of the various societies. It's
well, it could
fantastic.
come to that, yeah.
Would as you pursue the harem option, uh, don't forget your main girl. because if you like kind of go away
No,
from
he's
that
not
sort
going
of
to have a
thing,
harem.
all of a
He's not going
sudden,
to have a harem.
oh, okay. Well, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, it's a whole genre. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like one of those things. Like I just kind of like cast my eye out to see what's out there, and it's like, oh, this is basically male romance novels, except with like more catered to the individual man, I guess. I don't know.
Richard Bright, right? Male romance.
And it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Working with this sort of thing. Like when I started writing back in high school, uh, about 15 years ago or more now, 16 I guess. Um, I actually had like a whole me and a friend, we worked out a whole sort of universe on how it would work, and all the various monster types, the Valkyries and the giants and everything else like that. And one of the things I want to write, and I basically have it written in my head, is about this mad scientist and his giant girlfriend who was smart enough to put together an email client with some giant, like Times Square screens and stuff like that.
Oh my.
And so they started an internet romance, and it's like one of those things where it's like you're both like way uglier than you thought you'd be, but you're okay with it. Not that she's ugly or anything like that, but it's
That
it's uh it's just a lot of fun with that sort of thing. And so like just how would it work out? And so like the guy will like, because he's ravenously in love with his wife. He'll just go into detail with it to everyone's embarrassment. Like because she's 100 foot tall. It's like, well, you put on the wetsuit, and then and it's like, and everyone's like, no, 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 no.
we didn't want to know this.
We didn't want to know this. And his whole shtick will be like, they think he's embezzling parts to sell to the enemy they're fighting against. The enemy shows up because he's been embezzling stuff from them too, and it's just one of those things that just everything crashes together, and he goes off running around with a giant mecha. Um, that ends with him faking his death, and then going on to reveal that his big purpose is to figure out some way you can get human to giant children, um, artificial womb and everything like that. Uh, so it's just like touching in the end. But it's one of those things where I play around with size all the time. Uh, so that like when he's in the mecha, he's like the biggest thing around, and so there's going to be this scene where he's dancing with his giantess wife, and she's like, "Oh, can't we at least keep the mech?" It's like, "Nah, baby, we got to make this look good," sort of thing. You're just gonna have to enjoy this last dance, and then
Oh,
the Xanatos gambits and all that jazz start piling on, all according to Kaikaku plan, that is. So it's like
oh.
you can always play around with all kinds of things, and the thing is that most people just use it for perversion, if I'm being real, but it's you can do so much more. Uh, and we're probably just the type of madmen to pull it off. Ah well.
Seems like fun. Okay. So, yeah, that's yeah. I would like. I really would like. Yeah, yeah. I didn't even think about this when I was. What? All right. I only. This is something that really ran up into a tangent. But I just like. There's been so many stories where it's like, oh, those non-humans don't have souls, and I just want to do one like, no, what? How much more interesting could you make a story if the church was like trying to save everyone?
Right. Like,
No,
what's
that
the
would.
saint to the elves? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine going to the like, oh look, it's the bishop. All right, get him some hay because he's a centaur, and we're gonna be here a while.
Right. So it's like first breakfast for his human stomach, then, second breakfast for his horse stomach, and then it's
Uh-huh.
like, pardon me, gentlemen, I will use the restroom. And then he like goes to the compost pile. It's like you can do so much with it. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Well.
Mhm.
Hmm. Then there's a question of when you have like noble beasts like the eagles from Lord of the Rings, like they're technically close, not like angels like the Maiar were angels, but they're also
Yeah.
technically more spiritual beings than um, the hobbits and dwarves on their backs.
Yeah, that is something that here's an idea. Anybody listening can use this one because I've come to the conclusion that I will never ever uh, be able to turn this into a workable story. But what if you got a race that was not perfect, but was like 10 times as good or 10 times as bad as humanity? You
Mm-hmm.
know, the they only fall into they only commit sins about at a tenth of the rate. Could
Oh,
you even get along with that kind of race, or
oh
would it just
no.
have to be war to the knife? I mean, I've got this feeling you just wouldn't be able to tolerate each other because it'd be like you guys are too perfect to live with. Well, you guys are like you know every one of you behaves like one of our worst criminals all the time. And that's okay. That's you acting decently. What's wrong with you?
Right. It's like I'll make it easy for people. Like just pick up your generic fantasy book, like a bad one, like a one where it's like the hero's clearly a self-insert with a sword, and like he's got like the goblins and he's telling off the elves. Or, you know what? I'll make it a she. She's telling off the goblins and the elves or something like that, or the goblins or the worst ones, and it's like yes, for 1,000 years the goblins have been raping and pillaging and eating people, and then you have the elves, who have been the light of civilization for an equally amount of time. And it's like you just take those ideas and you just make them better, and it's done. Like you got it.
Yeah. Oh man.
Hmm. It's great stuff. I love talking about this stuff because it's more interesting than the generic stuff that just sort of gets popped up by a lot of the fantasy books. It's like, like, well, we've got this special thing and that special thing, and honestly, I'm very much in the thing of okay, but you're not doing anything with it. Like, there's no point to having giants or other species or anything else like that in a book unless you actually work with it. Like, how would a giant like work out? Like you have 100-foot tall woman, a woman, who has all the normal like woman things except giant. How do you deal with it? What's her food supply? Like how does she handle X, Y, and Z? Or you have a guy who's a Valkyrie. He's got the giant like wings. How does he handle the wings? Like what's his musculature like? Does he need a second heart? Does he need a second brain? Like it's not like a full brain, but like a reptile brain to handle his wings. Like, and if he's a Valkyrie, and of course that implies fighting, like how does he use them in combat? Does he use them like a club? Do they keep him out of the way? What happens when someone chops their wings off?
Yeah.
Like
Have you seen how like swans and geese use their wings when they're threatened?
right,
They're vicious. I mean, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's something now that I did handle. There's a book I'm shopping around, and if you want to listen to the first two chapters, they are also both on podcast. Well, okay, the first and a middle chapter would be more accurate. But they're called abandoned responsibility and responsibility descending. And this is another one of my monster girl heroines because she's a half dragon and she doesn't have arms so much as she's got really long wings.
So she's a
Well,
wyvern type.
yeah, and I mean she's got you know it's not that she doesn't have any hands at all, but her anatomy is a little bit a bat. So she's got two fingers on each hand, and then her other three fingers are approximately 4 feet long, and they have to be folded back anytime she is on the ground and sort of out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is an issue. This is a problem for her, and I mean that it's just a problem. It's just a thing half dragons deal with, just like people who are born without hands or with damaged hands. By the time they grow up, it's kind of second nature to them.
Mm-hmm.
Although of course they're always in a world that's not quite made for them either. So there's that. Um, you
I
know,
got you, by the way.
yeah,
I'm
and
putting a picture up on the stream thing so you can see what sort of look you can go for. Though she sadly doesn't have the two fingers stretched back. More of a bat than a wyvern, I guess.
yeah.
See if I got any
So
wyvern girls.
So the but I mean what I had to explain was, first of all, that you know it's not going that she knows this, but and that's not I mean responsibilities wings are a lot bigger than that, but because I'm trying to go with something that actually could theoretically fly,
Yeah,
but it's not too far off.
right.
Uh and and so what I was going for is that her bones are hollow and probably have amazingly high aluminum content.
Mm-hmm.
Although that's not something that she thinks about. This world doesn't have that level of chemistry,
Right.
and and uh, and so yeah, she does have immensely powerful arm muscles, but she's not really used to using those in any constructive way because she's grown up among humans and nobody, including her, really knows how a half dragon is supposed
You're fading out there, Scott.
to. Oh, sorry, I stood up.
Yep.
So I was about to say nobody, including her, really knows how a half dragon is supposed to act. And that's part of the story is her finding out where she came from and how she is supposed to live.
Yep. So how about this one? Should pop in a
I
few
don't,
seconds.
okay, so yeah, don't see that one yet.
No, no, don't worry about it. It'll pop in. It's like one of the things to delay with the screen and stuff like that. Also, going to use
Yeah,
this time to give a shout out to Alex and Kat Adams. Thank you so much for listening. We
yeah.
appreciate all of
Hey
our
Alex,
listeners.
thanks so much. And Kat, I meant to say Alex and Kat. I just can't talk.
It's all right. Neither can I really, but I still do this podcast. There we go. It popped up.
That's closer. Just once again, the wings would be a whole lot longer,
Yeah, but
and
there's
and
like a
and unless
cuteness ratio to it you have to maintain.
yeah, and unless the person is very very small, there's no way she can uh, she can fly with anybody else. But yeah, this is a plainly uh, even less realistic fantasy than I'm writing.
It's just more about it being adorable. Like for me, there's a certain level of you just kind of have to wave it around. Like if you have like alien species, let's be real, humans are pretty much the ideal form. We can handle any environment. Our phalanges can handle just about any situation. We're pretty strong. We can always get stronger. And like we almost have a thing where like what doesn't kill us makes us stronger as well, and our intelligence, can handle any problem, as long as it's a reasonable problem to have. I'm actually kind of like a anti-Malthusian, where I believe that once we fill the universe, assuming we even get that far and the Lord doesn't come back, but he'll take his sweet time. uh we'd break through to other universes or other realms and all that jazz in the end. Like something would happen to break the stalemate against entropy. Not that I'm saying we'd be perfected beings or some other nonsense like that, but, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, indeed. Sometimes I have kind of wondered. It's like, it occurs to me that with all the complaining about light speed limit, and how slow that makes travel, for immortal beings, light speed wouldn't be that big a hurdle.
Right.
Like, like what? Takes us 20 years to get to Alpha Centauri? So what? you know,
I'll use it to get some
we'll play a
reading
lot
done.
of cards. We'll play a lot of D&D on the way.
Right.
I mean that just wouldn't matter very much. All you'd have to do is solve the problem of how to keep people alive in space.
Yep. And it's like, honestly, it's like, that even assumes that once we get all that done, that we haven't figured out things like immortality or downloading your brain information. Sorry, not immortality. Warp gates and downloading your brain into a chip and just like beaming yourself, to Alpha Centauri and a thousand other little things that you can do, that are the realm of science fiction, but not necessarily have to be forever. And it's like we
Mm-hmm.
put cabling down in the sea. Why can't we put cabling in space? Like I've never understood that. Like, sure, it's difficult and it's a lot of resources, but just running, whatever the ultimate, fiberglass cable, whatever they've got, between
Quick,
alphas and
someone invent Scriff.
what,
Someone invent Scriff.
right? Or
Yeah.
any number of other things, and it's like, like there's no limit to the imagination, when it comes to these things. Just just people's wallets, I guess.
Hmm. I still think it's amazing that we've actually got private companies starting to expand into space and seemingly quite um, successfully so far. I mean, good
Hmm.
heavens, we got this big silver rocket just about ready to lift off. Unbelievable.
We'll see what happens with it. Uh, though there's all these different questions about it that people bring up, and it's like, I don't know. You remember Richard Branson
Mm,
of
no,
Virgin
like
Mobile?
I said.
He set up a Virgin Galaxy thing, which is basically him trying to get into space. People
Yeah,
bought
Virgin
tickets.
Galactic.
Galactic, yep. People bought like
Yeah,
$1,000 tickets. Crazy.
yeah, but did he actually build any?
No, no, he didn't.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between him and good old Elon. Then,
Oh, I'm hoping.
yeah,
But it's like one of those things. We'll see. I got hopes, high, high hopes for a living. Uh, but we'll see.
uh
I just want my cat girl, Scott. I just want cat
huh.
girls. It would create a whole, like, I would invest in headphone making companies if that happened, just for like the ones that are like on top of the head, because like sometimes you'll see it, and like they'll even poke fun at it sometimes, of like a cat girl having the headphones where her human ears would be, and like someone just like looking at her like, what are you doing? And then there's another one that shows her trying to put it like headphones on her cat ears, but they keep slipping off, so she starts crying and it's adorable. But uh me not having anything better to do probably helps me find all this stuff. Ah, well, I do have things better to do. If there's some sort of square cube law of some kind or other, where it's like any conversation with Ben will eventually devolve into Monster Girls given enough time.
Oh, is that what happens?
Every time, somehow, some way. Uh, and it will continue to happen, which is perfectly fine by me. I am looking forward to that novel, though. That sounds pretty good.
Well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to writing it. I hope. Oh, by the way, here's my shameless plug. So, my Patreon subscribers found out about this just a little bit earlier. So, if anyone wants to become a Scott Huggins Patreon subscriber, then I do have one.
What do you get for being a Patreon subscriber? That's important.
Let's see. Well, at the moment, I am offering, depending on an ongoing short story for you for each subscriber that I will add little bits to every month. Although I will admit I kind of got on hiatus for that because I started a new day job and it ate my brain. I'm ever since Dragon Con, my productivity has suffered, but I am starting to for the past week, I've done at least 500 words a day, and I'm hoping to get that more closer to 1,000. I did 1,000 today,
Ooh,
so
nice.
so it's getting it's getting better, just not up to where I would want it to be. Although let's be honest, unless I was writing a novel a week, it wouldn't actually be where I would want it.
Right? But then I'd run out of ideas, and I don't know if I can have that. Actually, no, it's more like I'd go through and then I'd have room in my head for more ideas. And Jason would
Yeah,
probably be a more overworked but happier man. Um, but yeah, that's all right. It looks like the $10 a month one is the detailed critique. That's what I
yeah.
like.
No one's ever taken me up on that, but yes, I will for the right amount of contribution, I will regularly read and critique your stuff. So if there's anybody who wants writing advice and mentorship out there, I will be happy to provide it.
Absolutely. Uh, though I just find this all very nice. I know John Del Raz has one. John C. Wright has one. You have one. I haven't really done one. I should sometime, but not today. I have to go back into making videos and writing more. Though I have learned how to format books, which means I'll probably end up formatting your book eventually.
I would love to know how. I would love to be better at that. I can kind of do it, but I have much to learn.
It's not that hard. It's just tedious. You have to be.
That's well, learning about it is tedious as well.
Yeah, I guess. I've been using Vellum with Jason, and it's been pretty easy. You just have to have a
Oh.
Mac OS. Um,
Ah!
I know. That's all right. We have virtual machines, though. We have virtual machines now. Technology has solved our problem of having to buy,
Yay!
crappy Mac products. Um, though I'm sure, like, so I used to work at a call center. I was a manager there actually, and I hated every single time an iPhone would come out. There would be lines for almost literal days. People would like pop out of the queue, and they'd be talking to like the technical support guys. Hey, I want the iPhone deal. No, I can repair your cell phone or sell you an iPhone at full price, but I don't have any access to deals. Send me back in. You sure it's 6 hours? Yes. Oh, okay. And then back in they
Oh.
go. And yeah, who knows what happened to them? I like to think they starved to death, but that's just me. Um, Actually, I was annoyed. This Thursday, I went to a hiring meeting for the gym I work at because it's part of a corporate chain. And it turns out, like, most of the things I learned are wrong or borderline illegal, one of the two. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to shut up for now on.
Oh
Uh,
dear.
But it also doesn't help that our HR manager has ideas about how reality should be, and I don't know if reality can bear it. I'll try, but HR's being a thing, and that's like, yeah, all right, that's fair.
Yeah, HR.
I came in at like the perfect moment, so like I got promoted real fast, and like no one else is ever gonna get promoted real fast again. So it's like,
They learned their lesson with you, right?
oh yeah, but it's like I'm still I'm still in there. They still like me. I think that's what they tell me. Well, Scott, we've been talking for an hour. I'm gonna play a clip of the Great Black Cat of the Witching Hour, which I will release in full. It's narrated by Ken Dickinson. Scott, do you have any final words for us today?
Let's see. If you're listening to this and you haven't yet, please leave a review for All Things Huge and Hideous because I could really use some more. But even more important than that, if you haven't read All Things Huge and Hideous, it's only $3.99 on Amazon, and it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. I recommend it wholeheartedly on the virtue of the covers alone, which is absolutely 10 out of 10. Please look forward to the covers we produce in the future. Mm. All right, Scott, you have a
Well,
good
thanks
night.
so much for having me, Ben. I really appreciate it.
No problem. When you have a nice big novel release, I'll have you back on.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, Scott.
Bye bye.
All right, let's get Great Black Cat of the Witching Hour playing. Narrated by Ken Dickinson. I actually read this out loud a year ago. Great Bulk Cat. It's fair. Let me make sure I got the right one. Yep. Let's see here.
Slobber and lick its lips in the dark. Och, me brave manny. But you mind my grandpa, and hide and pray if you see something witchy or smelling the sulphur. Corey clicked his tongue and gave his assurances. Soon he left her and her grandfather, one sullenly staring and the other waving. He swaggered off, leaving the light of their home for the darkness of the foggy moors between him and his house. The jaunt would take him the better part of 2 hours, but he figured that the time was well spent. Exercise and cardio. I'm fit as a fiddle, traipsing about to see my girl. Pshaw to the parson. Nuts to Mag's grandpa. I'll not see a single devil or witch this night. He declared both to himself and to the moors, as he crested the first of the low hills, separating his house from the house of his beloved. The moon had filled in nicely, and was nearly bright as day, despite the fog, with no light polluting the natural shine this far into the bogs. He could see his shadow as he jogged and power-walked up and down the moors. He danced a jig on the crest of one, in case Mag was watching him through her telescope, and worried after him. Clouds and wisps of mist crossed the sky and his path alike, and he took enjoyment from boldly running through the banks of fog, slipping through the night, making shapes in the corner of his eyes, yet slipping away when he turned to look. The chill made him feel alive, and he jumped a creek with a running leap. "Oh, but I'm as brave and bonny as any son of Scotland, fit as a fiddle and twice the fighter of any Sassenach." And so, as Corey McGraw danced up and down the moors, he bragged and boasted, louder and louder, until he nearly shouted over and over again how brave and bold he lived. Then he was struck by the silence. The shadows of cold and night had crept on him while he walked, and so his own disappeared. No amount of the moonlight seemed to better it and free his shadow from their grip. His heart fluttered a bare second, and he turned. The house Mag kept with her family could no longer be seen. No light crested the dark hills. He could, just barely, glimpse the glint of the church steeple, with its shiny gold cross at the top. Corey almost wished he was listening to the parson give his dry sermons. Bah! The old man got to me! And so he went on, whistling. Corey looked around him. He first whistled tunelessly, before launching into some pop song he'd heard on the radio. Then an old hymn. Yet it could not drown out the wind, nor did it fill the silence with anything like comfort. The echoes slid under his music, bringing it lower in tone, and creating an almost menacing air to the sound. He stopped whistling, and began to jog through the moors. As he neared the forest, he heard A large beast slobber and lick its lips in the dark. Something heavy, like an animal as big as a car, wheezed in and out in his direction. Corey turned. Cresting the moor and looking down on him with eyes of pale blue fire, an immense black dog. It had no depth or form beyond the silhouette. Only the eyes could be seen in the dog's head, at first. The next second, the mouth opened and flame shot from it in a gout. The bark turned into a howl like a volcano erupting. Worst of all, the inferno illuminated nothing, yet the heat scorched Corey's face. He ran for the forest with all the speed he could muster. The black dog bayed with the sound of a geyser, and galloped after him at a speed no mortal hound could match. Corey dodged quickly, though, and even as the flames melted the heels of his boots, he jumped into the forest. He tripped on a root, falling forward onto his face. He covered his head with his hands. However, he did not feel the flames, nor the hellish bite of some dog from the nightmares of his ancestors. He cast about him, and saw the black hound sniff at the edge of the forest before running away. Corey cursed. Will I prefer that monster to eat me by the end? He stood and shook off the leaves.
There we go. That's the first couple. Well, it's not the first couple of minutes. It's like minute 5 through minute 7 or something. You know how it is. Guys. Look forward to it. I'm going to release it on Halloween, as well as start putting out a few more videos that have been useful. I know I've been saying it, but I'm going to try it this time for sure. All right, you guys all have a great rest of your Sunday, and of course, work tomorrow. Goodbye.